Senior Fellow at the Rajaratnam School of International Studies at Nanyang Technological University. Professor, thank you so much for joining us this morning. I want to start by asking you about what happens next. The ceasefire appears to be holding despite sporadic attacks, if you like. We know in the meantime, Israel has rejected a UN Security Council meeting. Al-Sharaa remains defiant. So what are the possible ways this might play out when all parties, no one seems to be happy about the situation?
Well, this is a challenge not only to the new government in Syria, but also a very serious challenge to President Trump's administration, because President Trump has recognized the new regime in Syria and has also lifted all the sanctions against it. And at the same time, the State Department spokesman has called Syria a sovereign state, that its sovereignty should not be really violated. But Israel, of course, is not content with this situation. Israel wants to demilitarize the Syrian territory from the occupied Golan Heights right up to south of Damascus. What does Israel really want? Of course, Prime Minister Netanyahu has said that he is basically trying to protect the Druze minority in Syria, which really basically form about 3% of the population. And they do have ties with their kindreds across the border in Israel. But to me, it appears that Prime Minister Netanyahu is basically using the fighting between the government forces and the Druze minority in Syria to expand Israel's security footprints in Syria, as it's really done in Lebanon. And of course, it is occupied the West Bank, as well as what it's really doing in Gaza. And of course, at the same time, challenging the Islamic Republic of Iran.
So, Professor, I wonder how much daylight you see between U.S. and Israeli policy on Syria, and will Tel Aviv take Washington's warning seriously or continue acting unilaterally?
Well, there is a great deal of daylight between the two sides, and certainly they do not really agree on everything. And of course, President Trump is keen to see a possible ceasefire in Gaza, as well as Israelis withdrawing their forces from Syria and observing the ceasefire in Lebanon, which Israel has been violating quite regularly. But at the same time, let's not really forget that there is a very strong strategic partnership between Israel and the United States, and the bombs that the Israelis are dropping and the planes with which these bombs are dropped, they are all produced by the United States and made of the United States, and therefore the United States do have a lot of leverage over Prime Minister Netanyahu and the Israeli government as a whole to pull Prime Minister Netanyahu into line and to prevent it from expanding this horrible situation that is ignited in the Middle East that could easily result in much bigger war. And I think one has to also be very conscious of the fact that Turkey is a very strong supporter of the al-Sharaa's government or interim government in Damascus, and the President Erdogan has already warned Israel against escalating the conflict and requested to pull out its forces from Syria. And of course, also most of the members of the Arab League has done the same thing. So if that's not, if Israel continues its bombing of Syria, and this is going to cause enormous difficulties for the al-Sharaa government to consolidate power and to try to unite a country which has is a Sunni majority Muslim state, but it's got a number of minorities that are basically challenging the central government. And of course, Druze is one of them. So that will make the task of really bringing about national unity for the Syrian government enormously difficult.
Professor, some are questioning, though, efforts by the interim president, Ahmed al-Sharaa, in terms of his efforts to protect minorities. Do you feel he's doing enough? Going back to your point about how Israel is using this as an excuse to expand its security footprint?
I think he's claimed that he's doing his best, but of course, let's not really forget that Syria has suffered a terrible, terrible internal conflicts over the last many years, and so quite a number of other countries have been involved in support of one side or the other. For example, the Islamic Republic of Iran and Russia has supported the Assad regime, and Turkey and a number of Arab countries, particularly members of the Arab League, had opposed it, and of course the West and the United States had really opposed the Assad regime. But now that the al-Sharaa government has come to power, and of course al-Sharaa, it is very obvious to everybody that he's had a controversial history in the sense that he has been aligned with Al-Qaeda and of the ISIS in the past, but at the same time, he has been really trying to reach out to Israel for a more peaceful coexistence, and he has voiced a very strong support for making peace with Israel, but that is not really sufficient, or has not really proved to be sufficient for Prime Minister Netanyahu and the extremists in his cabinets, who really basically wants implementation of a grand plan in terms of an expanded and more secure Israeli state in the region.
Professor, if we could turn to another flashpoint, which is Gaza. The latest strike on a Catholic church has drawn frustration from the White House as well. How will these new strikes impact ceasefire negotiations?
Well, I mean, definitely, either it could accelerate the negotiations or impede the negotiations, depending again on the White House or what is really going to do with it, because it's the Christian minorities that have come under pressure from Israelis as well. It's not just Muslim Palestinians, but also Christian Palestinians. And to bomb a Christian holy site, then of course that is a major challenge to the White House, particularly given the fact that President Trump trying to represent a more Christian state, and that is, of course, the United States, and he wants to stand for Christianity. And how he's really going to deal with this challenge, I think it's going to be very critical for the leadership of the United States in the region.
Professor, we do have to go and leave it there for now. Thank you so much for your time and your thoughts this morning. Amin Saikal is adjunct senior fellow at the Rajaratnam School of International Studies at the Nanyang Technological University.